Welcome to Purple Elephant Radio, where we discuss the mindsets, philosophies, and strategies needed to make art and tell stories that make a dent in this era of abundance. This is a show for the unbound creative, the undefinable artists, and the unidentified philosophers. I'm your host, Sean Green. Welcome back to Purple Elephant Radio. Before I get into this episode, I do want to say I've been toying around with the idea of, I'm sure you've seen the thumbnail of this podcast says, it's for creative people. I've realized that the past episodes I've been making, and even in the last couple seasons too, it has not been for creative people as in artists. And I'm much more leaning towards it's for curious people. Now, the distinction may not sound that wild, it may not sound that different. Of course, it's going to fit really nicely as I change that for the thumbnail. But I think there is a major difference. And I've already noticed on Instagram, my following has been dropping, coming back up with different followers as I post these podcast clips as Instagram Reels. I'm not really appealing to the artist anymore. I'm not pandering with what I consider very basic, sort of self-help based artist advice. It's just not interesting to me. And I still consider myself an artist. And I hope that the people watching create art and tell stories. But just know, I'm probably never going to go back to the 10 ways to complete a project, 10 ways to get rid of writer's block. This is really for the person who's curious about themselves and curious about, what makes you tick. And that's something you have to answer for yourself, but I'm hoping these videos, just the most recent ones and the ones moving forward, will give you those tools and those questions to start getting introspective with yourself. Because there's not anything I can teach you or explain to you that you couldn't verify on your own. And so, in transitioning to the actual episode today, I'm going to be talking about outgrowing emotional reactivity. So, of course, emotional reactivity is going to be, I think it'll ruffle some tail feathers as I talk about what I'm going to talk about today. I think for people not accustomed to thinking about their emotions as self-created, it's going to probably offend you. Because I'm going to say stuff like, yeah, you create your own anger. You create your own anxiety, whether or not you realize it. I just want to give that preface, because if you're the type of person who likes watching videos about, little tips and tidbits to feel less stressed or less anxious, that's not what this is going to be. This is going to be more of a general overview of how the thinking mind works and how it perpetuates negative emotions longer than it needs to. But I'll get into all that. So really, when I talk about outgrowing emotional reactivity and emotional reactivity on its own, I'm really thinking about anger, anxiety, and I guess you could toss in there envy or jealousy and even depression or sadness. But I basically want you to think about this for yourself, asking yourself, what is my negative emotional home? Sort of the place you resort to, the emotional state you resort to when things aren't going your way. For some people, that's always going to be anger. For some, it's anxiety. I would say for me, it sort of balances between the two. Sometimes I get really angry, sometimes I get really anxious. But then I know there are countless other people who may resort to depression or feeling sad. I'm not going to get into the psychology of these emotional states. I'm not going to be citing any scientific studies, and you'll see I don't need to for what I'm saying. So just hear what I have to say and then come to conclusions by the end of this video. But the main two I'll be focusing on are anger and anxiety, because I think, first of all, they are very, very common. And second of all, I think I can sort of speak to them from a personal level. and hopefully explain them in a way that have never been explained to you before. So when I talk about emotions, I don't need to explain the word. When I say someone is angry, you know what that means. And I think you can even verify for yourself what the physical sensations, what the body posture of someone who's angry looks like. It may feel internally like a quicker beating chest, like your blood is boiling, like your skin is crawling, like you just have so much excess energy, like you want to punch something, but you know you can't. And then what about anxiety? So you're still going to have that fast beating, fast heartbeat, and you'll still feel pretty tight and tense, but there may be more of a helplessness associated with that. That there's not the urge to punch something as you would if you were angry, but something along the lines of a timid response, sort of a clutching your arms together, tightening yourself. And then someone who may be feeling depressed or sad may feel a heaviness, a weight in their chest, sort of a teary-eyed feeling around the back of their eyes. And the reason I describe all those in their physical sensations is because I think we're too quick to generalize the sensation and just say, I'm angry, I'm anxious, I'm envious, I'm jealous. If someone even has the vocabulary to say envious versus angry, because I know the distinction's not always easy to make. And I will say, because this will, I am sure, relate to a lot of people, anger and stress and anxiety. Stress is just become a generalized term for many different high-strung emotional states. So I'm not going to be talking about stress, but know that I mean someone got angry during a work situation, that can also mean stressed. Or if I say someone got anxious from getting some certain news, that can also mean stressed. So I don't like using the word stress. I think it is overused. I think it is hollow. I don't think people understand what that actually means on an emotional level. I'm sure they can understand it from a scientific studies and this is what your heartbeat goes up to when you're stressed. But at experiential level, I'm talking about emotions. And stress just happens to stand for our generic negative emotion in contemporary times. Again, totally would love to hear a discussion if you agree or disagree with that. But in talking about anger and anxiety, in explaining the physical sensations of those emotions, the reason I bring that up is because the sensations on their own are uncomfortable. I know, not so revolutionary of an idea, but I would equate it to the sensation in a way as stubbing your toe. So let's say, for example, you live with a roommate or a family member and you kept telling them, put your shoes away, they're all over the place, your stuff's all over the place, and you trip over something that was theirs and you fall over and hurt yourself. Just for the sake of clarity, let's say you stub your toe. That pain of stubbing your toe is a very real pain. We know what it feels like. It doesn't feel good. But the thought of, I told them to move their stuff. I can't believe their stuff is still there. What are they thinking? I'm going to be so mad at them when they come home. I'm going to tell them that they were wrong and they made me hurt myself and I can't believe they... What I'm saying is that the pain of stubbing your toe was the cause of the anger. Not the fact that that roommate or family member happened to put that stuff there even though you told them not to. So it's the externally caused pain that causes the thoughts to arise, and those thoughts are the things that usually latch on to blaming someone or something else for the pain. And the reason our thoughts naturally do that, and I'm, again, not speaking about this from a scientific perspective, but I'm just saying you can verify this for yourself. It's because we don't want to feel foolish. I mean, take the example I just said. If you stub your toe, and even though someone's stuff was there, it could have been because you were completely distracted and not looking and running around, and you shouldn't have been doing what you were doing because you knew it might have led to a injury. It's way easier to blame someone else. Say, I don't want to think about the fact that I did a stupid thing and I shouldn't have been running where I wasn't supposed to run, but it was their bag that was left out. I tripped over their stuff, so it is their fault. They made me mad. Or that situation made me mad. Because sometimes we don't have another person to blame. Especially in the case of, just to give another picture to start imagining what I'm saying, when you look at car accidents, sometimes even the person who hit the person, who is the cause of the accident, can get just as mad as the person who got hit, assuming no one was seriously injured. They may think, oh my God, I was totally going to make that and they sped up and, maybe I shouldn't have made that left turn, but it doesn't matter because, they should have let me go and I was driving as fast as I could and they caused it. Their anger is being used as sort of a deflection tool to blame the other person, no matter the scenario. But I'm sort of equating two things. So the external causes the internal of that emotion. The emotion allows the thought to arise that is usually a thought that blames or projects the feeling somewhere else. So we don't have to take personal responsibility for causing our own emotional state. Now, this is really important on sort of a general societal level when we talk about anger being sparked on social media. Because on social media, it is very easy to blame, to find scapegoats, to find people who don't agree with you who are absolute idiots. You sort of become this hammer looking for a nail everywhere you go, looking for someone to blame for your feelings of anger. Never, of course, looking inwardly and saying, what is actually the cause of this anger? So what I want to emphasize in this first part is there's the physical sensation, whether it is stubbing your toe or whether it is the physical sensation of an emotion, and there is the thought related to anger, anxiety, depression, etc. They're two separate things. It is possible to feel pain in the chest, on your stub toe, anywhere in your body without having the negative emotional thoughts related to that pain. How do you do that? This is not something you can do where you would do, say, I'm going to drive a car or I'm going to run 10 miles. It's not like a conscious executive functioning brain skill. It is a letting go. But more importantly, because it's not enough to just say, oh, just, stop thinking about feeling angry. Because I'm sure, again, you can verify this on your own. If someone clearly sees you're angry and tells you to take a deep breath or calm down, usually does not make you calm down. Usually it makes you more angry. How can you tell me to calm down right now? I'm totally, they're not saying this, but I'm totally justified in my anger. I can't believe you would tell me to calm down. I need to feel angry because it... So trying to tell someone to stop feeling angry or whatever emotional state they're feeling at that moment is not effective. And trying to do that yourself when you're in the grip of an angry thought pattern or an anxious thought pattern is completely ineffective too, if you even remember to. Because I'll just give a very specific example. I think it was maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, someone at my work called in sick very last minute. And they sort of made everyone have to work much harder to sort of carry the burden of what they had left. And I remember thinking, there's no way that they were actually sick. They had worked the day before, and throughout the day I would have these thoughts of they're just sitting on the couch, they're not doing anything, they just wanted a day off, and they're screwing us over, they're screwing me over. What I would consider angry thought patterns. And just to be clear, to give some clarity to how emotions arise, that exact same scenario, someone could feel anxious, someone could feel depressed when that happens, or angry. If someone was feeling anxious, they may not be worrying about that other person as much, but they may think, now I have so much to do, we're not going to be able to do this, the customers are going to get so mad, blah, 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 blah. So I just want you to be able to see the same external situation can cause different emotions to arise in a person. But for me, it was anger. And that day, when I was feeling angry, I could not shake the thoughts away. Even though I know this stuff, I'm telling you this stuff because I've known it for a couple months now. I was thinking, why are you feeling angry? You don't need to feel angry. Basically, my rational mind and my emotional mind were sort of battling each other. And, on one side, I wanted to feel angry because it sort of justified, it sort of gave me a sense of self-assurance. But on the other side, I'm like, there's no reason to feel angry. It's not a big deal. You can't do anything about it. Why would I have these angry thoughts? It's not making anything better. It's not changing anything. But I couldn't shake the anger. So, long story short, that day, by the end of the day, we got through it. It was fine. And then I think it was a week later, I found out that this person had not been sick, but they had a very, very valid reason for not being able to come in. And I can't go back in time and say, oh, if I knew what I knew then, I would have been not really caring. I'm sure the anger would have arisen anyway. And if anything, I would have felt probably a little bit of guilt on top of that, so that wouldn't have helped anything. But the external situation arose, a person calling out from work, they couldn't come in, and it triggered a thought, which triggered the sensation, the physical sensation of anger. So the reason I illustrate that and the reason I'm breaking it down like that is because emotions can arise two different ways. And they both relate to external situations for the most part. On one side, it may be physical pain, whether it's stubbing your toe or, we can even say something like you got food poisoning. You're more likely to lash out at someone. If you're sick, if you have a cough, you're more likely to lash out at someone. I get canker sores. When I have mouth sores, I get pissed off. So the physical sensation can cause the thought patterns that we associate with anger or stress or anxiety, etc. Or the external situation can arise, which triggers thoughts of angry thoughts, like in the case I just mentioned. They didn't come in, so my mind was sort of coming up with excuses for how they were faking it or how they were screwing us over, how it wasn't fair. And that caused the emotional state of anger, the tightness in the chest, the boiling blood. So what I'm saying is emotions are both thought patterns and physical sensations. And one can cause the other. It is not like you always have to feel anxious before you start thinking anxious thoughts and vice versa. They co-arise. So I know this might be a little bit complicated, but you, again, can verify this on your own. Just pause the video in just a second and think back to a time when you were most recently angry. Let's just assume that it came from an external source. Was it that you were already in physical pain? Or was it that the situation arose, you started thinking angry thoughts, and then the sensation of anger arose? And just before you pause it, if you are going to pause, I think one really interesting thing to think about is when it comes to stimulants and depressants, coffee and alcohol. With coffee, your heart is naturally, or not naturally, but caffeine makes your heart beat faster. And we can also see, again, I would have to verify this with science to see if there's evidence there, but I would hypothesize, and I will link any sources I need to in the description, but I would hypothesize that someone who drinks a lot of coffee is more likely to feel angry or more likely to feel anxious than someone who is not. And as you're hearing what I'm saying, it may make sense why that would be the case. It's because that physical sensation of the fast beating heart causes the angry or anxious thought patterns to arise, which then perpetuates the emotion, gives it validity. Oh, my heart's beating faster because I'm actually angry right now. I'm actually anxious right now. And the reason that matters is because if you continue to just go through your ebbs and flows of positive and negative emotions for the rest of your life without actually realizing what triggers it, and again, it's not specific things that trigger it, which that, yes, certain things can trigger emotions, but I'm talking about being triggered by physical sensations causing emotional thoughts, and emotional thoughts triggering physical sensations. So without realizing that, there is no way to outgrow emotional reactivity. And I think therapy does a really good job of helping people identify, okay, I get anxious when this thing arises externally. This specific thing, whenever someone says X, Y, or Z, I start feeling angry or anxious. So I'm glad I know that, so I'll cope with it. I'll use cognitive behavioral therapy, etc. But I think it is incredibly important to understand that in that instance I just said, the thought or the external thing causes the thought to arise, and the thoughts cause the physical sensation to arise. And so this is the part where I talk about how to outgrow that emotional reactivity. Now, I'll preface by saying, in the moment, if you are angry and you haven't really practiced this at all, you're not gonna snap your fingers and stop feeling angry. And if you did, you'd probably be suppressing the emotion, which is not what I'm talking about here. What I'm really talking about is separating the thought patterns and the physical sensation and focusing all your attention on the physical sensation. I don't even want to make this sound like it's some exercise or some complicated thing. This should become an intuitive process. It should already be understood intuitively. I'm not saying you gotta count to 10, take 10 deep breaths, and then go back to thinking whatever thought you want to think after that. I'm just saying, anytime you realize that you're angry, go straight to the sensation of what it means to feel angry. Not listening to the thoughts that pop up in your head, the stories, the justifications for why you're angry, but specifically, feel how fast your heart is beating. Does your skin feel like it's boiling, or do you feel like you have so much energy? Just feel that. Without labeling it, without needing to say, oh, this is anger, and I'm angry, and this is why I'm angry, and resorting to the story. And you can do that for anger, you can do that for anxiety, you can do that for any other emotion that is presumably negative. And I think there's still going to be some pushback, because I understand people can't flip off their thoughts like it's a switch. But this is where sort of the more esoteric side comes in. So I remember when I was in my teens, there would be times where I'd be arguing with one of my parents, and I'd just get so mad. I was so convinced that I was right about something, and maybe a couple minutes into the conversation, I would realize I'm wrong. But still be boiling with anger, and still be, saying, I'm right, I know this is right. And I feel like it's almost like a sitcom or like a cartoon where someone is yelling and it's slowly dawning on them that they're totally wrong, and they just keep yelling and keep defending their point. And at that age, this was, let's say, anywhere from 12 years old to really 21 years old. But that whole span of time, even when I realized I was wrong about something, or even when I realized, I wasn't as defensive about a point as my anger was making it seem, I held on to it. I held on to the anger. And the reason was because I was trying to preserve my sense of self. Because if, let's say, I realized I was angry and knew that I was wrong, I didn't want to let go of the anger because it felt like I would be conceding, giving in. They win, I lose. I'm inferior, they're superior. And so it was sort of this, I guess you could call it a feeling, but a general sense that to give in, to drop a negative emotion when I realized I don't want to feel the negative emotion, the reason I couldn't is because I was trying to preserve my sense of self. In that moment, I was angry and I was right. And no matter what anyone said, I was still right and they couldn't prove me wrong. And this relates to anxiety as well, but not necessarily when it comes to arguing something. If I were to relate it to something outside of anger, I would say it's really like when you're anxious about something and then you realize, oh, this isn't going to be as bad as my mind was making it out to seem, but you still can't seem to let go of the negative thought patterns. So that's more of a internal, intrinsic type of dealing with the emotion, whereas anger is usually projected outward. So I'm just emphasizing that because I know not everyone is going to have anger as their dominant negative emotional home. But what do I mean by preserving a sense of self when it comes to holding on to an emotion longer than it needs to be held? I almost imagine it like a suit of armor where I'm wearing this angry armor or this anxious armor or this envious or depressed armor. And because I have, and really armor as a metaphor is your thought patterns around the emotional sensation, because I have the thought patterns, I don't have to actually feel the sensation. Again, this is going to get a little esoteric, so please bear with me. When you drop the armor, it feels, even in the metaphor, like you would be very vulnerable. Oh, if I don't have a story for why I'm angry, that just means my blood is boiling, my skin is crawling, my heart is beating faster for no reason. And once you're able to do that, of dropping the emotional armor without any sense of hesitancy, you realize that you don't have to have a reason for an emotion arising. And what I mean by that is the physical sensation. Because, and this is a quote that gets paraphrased, I don't think the Buddha actually said it, but it's attributed to him, but it goes something like, anger is holding a burning hot coal in your hand with plans to throw it at someone else, but never letting go. Said another way, anger or any of these negative emotional sensations is intensifying the suffering that only you can feel. And it may not seem like there's a choice involved. And I'm telling you, well, there is not a choice involved. There is no choice if you're feeling angry in the moment. You can't resist the angry sensations. But by letting them be, by feeling the feelings, and what that means is focusing so intensely on the sensations, whether that's feeling your heartbeat or focusing on your breath, you take energy, you take focus away from your thoughts. And when you take focus away from your thoughts cannot perpetuate the negative emotions. Because yes, guess what? When you're angry, the thoughts in your head are not, self-chosen. They're not rationally decided thoughts. They are sort of automatic narrative-based thoughts to justify why you feel uncomfortable. And to get to the heart of it, to get to the heart of the sensation, which is feeling without labeling it with a thought, that's all you have to do. Because it will go away eventually. Because no emotion can possibly stay in your body forever. Again, you can verify this all on your own. This may not sound scientifically valid or, where's your proof for all this stuff? You be the proof. Realize it for yourself. So, in concluding this episode, when it comes to outgrowing emotional reactivity, it is not about finding a couple tidbits to reduce your stress or even going to your happy place when you're angry. It's not about distracting yourself. It's about going to the heart of it. And I really like saying going to the heart of the emotion because it really does relate to your physical body sensations. So your heartbeat is one of those things. So get to the heart of the emotion, which means go outside of your head, outside of the thought patterns. Just feel it as it is. There is one little caveat. Obviously, if you're feeling an emotion, whether it's feeling like there are tears about to stream down your face because you're really sad, or feeling so angry that you need to get some physical energy out, there are going to be times where you just can't do that thing. And you sort of have to sit with the emotion. There is a very distinct difference between suppressing the emotion, which basically means distracting yourself with thoughts and creating stories and blaming and projecting and using scapegoats to justify your emotions. That's suppressing. And feeling the sensation as it is without feeling forced to express it. And once you understand that distinction, that is how someone can feel anger as it arises in them without feeling the need to pull everyone in and start yelling at other people and blaming and projecting. Once you can sit with any emotional state, negative or positive, it may sound like an exaggeration, but you are really resilient to a lot of stuff. Because most of the things that we fear in life are actually a fear of certain emotional states. And I don't want this to get too long, so maybe I'll save that for another time. But really, I'm just saying, feel what there is to feel. Go straight to the emotion. And sometimes it's going to feel scary. And scary in a psychological sense, not like the emotion of fear. Because I think it was one of the Roosevelts who said, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. I used to like that quote. I actually don't anymore. Because if you can accept the sensation of fear, then you are technically fearless in this meta way of thinking about it. I hope this message is coming across. I hope it is making a little bit of sense. But if 24 hours from now you feel really angry or really anxious, or you go back to whatever your negative emotional home is, go straight to the sensation. The sensation without needing to justify its purpose with thoughts. And when thoughts arise, you go back to the sensation. In a way, it's like meditation, but you don't have to make it a formal practice. It's just the second you realize you're, as the Buddha said, holding a hot coal, let go. And unconsciously, you're probably going to pick it up again because the pattern is there. You're going to think angry thoughts again. Oh, I'm holding a hot coal, let go. And as you let go and let go and let go and let go of the thoughts over time, it becomes easier. And one day it will become automatic, where you have truly outgrown emotional reactivity. And there's no more need to blame or project your emotions on someone else. Thank you for listening.
If you like this episode, it would mean a hell of a lot if you rated it on Spotify, on iTunes, left a nice review. Thank you.